My guest today is Devon Bryant. Devon is a Los Angeles-based musician, writer, and podcast producer, formerly of bands like Furry Things and Warm Ones, and currently of podcasts like Just Jack and Will and Bad Dates for Smartless Media. It is my extreme pleasure to welcome to Revolutions Per Movie, Devon Bryant. Hi, Devon.
Hey, Chris. Good to see you. Good to talk to you.
Good to see you. We met in person at the Best Show a couple months ago.
That's right. And at the Eyelids show 2 nights before on the Sunday night when you guys played it. What was it? Gold Diggers?
At Gold Diggers. But it was really nice to meet you in person. I've always heard you in the background at Hollywood Handbook and other podcasts.
Yes.
where you're a character, you're included.
Yeah.
But I was really excited when I was talking to you about this project. You were the first person who was like, I want to talk about Robyn Hitchcock. I want to talk about Storefront Hitchcock.
Specifically.
And I own it in 3 different formats.
4 now, because I just got the VHS last week.
Okay. Okay. So are you a Robyn Hitchcock completist?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, his catalog is so vast. I don't know how you could be like an actual like collector completist. I'm sure there are people, but there's so even in Storefront Hitchcock, there's a couple tunes from here that are from like a 7-inch that he put out on K Records. That is super rare, very hard to find. I have an MP3 basically of like everything he's ever recorded or released. Basically, at some point, someone, a friend, had like the full catalog and was like, you need to have this. And so I have an MP3 of everything.
Right.
In terms of like actual good quality stuff, I have, tons of the CDs. I have like all the big stuff on vinyl, probably about 20 of his records on vinyl. But I have a ton of the Soft Boys stuff as well. I love the Soft Boys.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm completist. I don't know. I'm really into specific areas of his work, and Storefront Hitchcock is kind of perfectly centered because all of the solo albums that kind of he's pulling from for this, like and Moss Elixir, which is the one he was touring at the time, and I Often Dream of Trains, which he doesn't do anything from here, but that's kind of like the genesis of this whole style of his. That's my favorite vein of him. I like him alone. I mean, I like him in a band too, but I really like him alone. I like when he's able to just, exist in the song, and it's only him, providing all the rhythm and all the backdrop to the story. He can alter it, he can change it, he can do whatever he wants in the moment, and often does. So I find him alone and untethered really exciting. And Storefront Hitchcock is like a perfect example of it.
The movie we're going to discuss, Storefront Hitchcock, which was directed by Jonathan Demme.
Yes, which is the other reason I wanted to talk about Storefront Hitchcock specifically, because I'm a Demme super fan also.
Oh, excellent. But it's grabbing songs from like late 90 period solo records, like Moss Elixir and Respect. And then earlier things from the 80s, some stuff with the Egyptians. No Soft Boys material.
None.
And even some stuff that was going to come out later on Star from Bram. Is that what it's called?
And Jewels for Sophia, yeah.
So it's a pretty interesting mix. I was excited that you picked this because Dagger to Your Heart. I've never seen this film. I'd never seen it.
That's exciting. That's great.
So I kind of felt like Robyn Hitchcock was just always there. I remember discovering him on Iris is a Cutting Edge. They had a couple videos for I Often Dream of Trains and Man with the Light Bulb Head.
Yes, exactly.
And I thought it was really amazing and obviously very steeped, when you're young and kind of steeped in mythology and sound of Syd Barrett solo work and things like that.
Definitely.
Direct line to it. But
yes.
But I couldn't find like a Soft Boys record in Portland, Oregon. So eating this film was a lot different than how you devoured it.
Sure.
So where did you get turned on to Robyn Hitchcock first then?
So it's interesting. This is true of a lot of different things that I end up being super into and become kind of cornerstones of my personality. The first time I come across it, I don't like it.
Yes.
So the first time I ever encountered Robyn Hitchcock, well, actually, not true. The first time I ever encountered him was the song Balloon Man from Queen Elvis, which was on one of those CMJ new music samplers that came with that magazine back in the 90s. And I loved those CDs that, 22 tracks that were on there every single, whatever it was, I think bi-monthly or every 2 months. And I loved that song. It's a great upbeat Beatlesy pop song with very strange lyrics. And, that appeals to me. That's my style kind of. But the first time I ever really came across him was seeing him live at the Flaming Lips headphone tour that they did, the tour for the Soft Bulletin. And this was the first iteration of them touring without Steven playing drums. And the way they did this show, this was in Denver, Colorado. I can't remember where it was. Might have been the Orpheum. They or the Ogden rather. They handed out headsets, and you're supposed to put on the headphones, and the idea would be that you'd hear all the music in stereo. They're being sent to a radio transceiver though, so they're it was delayed from what was happening on stage, and what's happening on stage is so much louder than your headphones could be that it did not work at all. It didn't work. It was a great idea, but I mean, everyone in the room just was like, okay, I'm just going to take these off so I could just listen to the music, because it was a cool idea. I was really excited about it. But so the lineup that night was Sonic Boom from Spaceman 3 was
amazing.
Yeah, he was doing his he made a record at the time called Data Rape that was like a circuit bent speak and spell record. There was only that, and so
I've never heard of that.
It was, I used to have it on vinyl. I don't anymore, unfortunately. But the live show was just him with a whole floor laid out of 16 speak and spells that were all circuit bent, and he just did stuff with them for 25 minutes, and it was amazing. It was so cool that I went out and bought the record after that. And Sebadoh were on the show that night, and they played for 15 minutes, and then they it seemed like they broke up on stage, they got in an actual fist fight.
I've seen 3 shows where I was like, this is the last Sebadoh show.
Totally.
I even saw a solo Lou Barlow show where I was like, I think this is the last Lou Barlow show. So it was kind of the dynamic of that band.
It was really, and I was a huge fan of theirs. Bake Sale being one of my favorite records, literally of all time. I like it almost better than every Dinosaur Jr. record. I'm so attached to Sebadoh's Bake Sale. So they played, and then Robyn Hitchcock came out, and he was right before Flaming Lips. And it was something about exactly what I love about Storefront Hitchcock. It was his onstage banter, right?
Yes.
That just goes where it goes and is what it is. And you have to surf his mind waves. You got to go with him. And I wasn't going with him that night. I was like, this guy is irritating. Maybe he'll play Balloon Man, the one song I know. And I'll be like, but he didn't. He was playing basically this type of stuff. It would have been 99. So it's a couple years later, but it's, if he's still touring Jules for Sophia and Star for Brahm, he's still playing quite a few songs from this. And the one I remember most is the very last song, which is a hidden track on one of those 2 records. I can't remember which one it is, but it's Don't Talk to Me About Gene Hackman, which is it's an amazing song. Don't talk to me about Gene Hackman. It's such a great song. That night it was the final straw for me. I was like, fuck this guy. He's just here, he's just here goofing around. He's not even taking this seriously. I was such a little dickhead 19-year-old who was just like, music should be taken seriously. Everything's important and serious, and I wasn't in the mood for his whimsicality that night, which is odd because I was at a Flaming Lips show, and what are they if not whimsical, especially on Soft Bulletin era. Anyway, fast forward, and exactly what you said about Soft Boys being so hard to find for years. It was difficult you couldn't get a copy of Underwater Moonlight until Matador put out that reissue.
Yes, that's where I heard it.
Exactly. Me too. And even though I had this thing that I'd been carrying then for, I don't know what that was, maybe 2002, 3 that they put that out. In my head, I've been carrying this thing that I don't like Robyn Hitchcock. I knew he was in the Soft Boys, but something about the cover of Underwater Moonlight and the logo of the way Soft Boys is written on it, and flipping it over and seeing, oh, this is 3 CDs with it's got all the rehearsal tracks on that third CD and all the singles and stuff. I was like, I would buy that kind of thing from almost any artist, because it's just such a big amount of stuff to I even if I didn't like them, I'd be interested to hear it, just because it's like reading I say this all the time, but I would watch a rock documentary about pretty much any band. I would watch a Zappa one. I hate Zappa. I'm not a Zappa fan. Loved that Zappa documentary. Don't like Steely Dan.
The Grateful Dead one.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing. I was like,
totally.
My wife was like, you're still at it. You've had to break it up. I'm like, I need a break. I keep trying to find the part of the documentary that they're going to win me over. Is it like, is it the Warlocks? No.
No.
Is it their culture? No. Is it the
No.
people behind the scene? I'm just like,
Definitely not.
But it was still really well told and fascinating.
Exactly.
So,
with that kind of curiosity, that's what made me get Soft Boys. And from there, my whole opinion of Robyn Hitchcock just, did a complete flip, because I was like, I understand now. I get kind of now with Underwater Moonlight, I saw where he had started, essentially, and where he was kind of coming from. And like you say, the Syd Barrettness came through in a different way there. The Monty Python came through in a different way there, where I really kind of internalized that he was a part of that world, and the Bob Dylan, which is like such a huge part of it.
Yeah, I think it's a important rite of passage to have things not be understood on first listen or first watch.
Yes.
And then there's something in it that makes you not completely give up on it.
That's right.
My first Guided by Voices stuff I ever heard, didn't like it.
Sure.
And then I ended up being in that band, and it was my favorite band. I couldn't wait to be in that band.
Yeah.
I had to see them live to understand it.
Right.
I was at this point like going like, oh, I love the Grifters, all this lo-fi stuff, but maybe I've had enough of this lo-fi thing.
Yeah.
And then they're like an amazing rock band.
Right.
Even when I first heard Radio Free Europe by REM, I was with some friends we heard it and we kind of making fun of it.
Right.
But then they kept playing a commercial with a little snippet of that. And through the course of the evening, I think I was like secretly like, I think I love it.
Yes.
And because you own it and it's sitting on your shelf, you just kind of have to go back and be like, well, maybe I like this second track, and the second side's pretty good. And then it just my favorite things are things I didn't understand on the first listen, like The Fall.
Yeah.
Got it by Voices. Even getting like Meat Puppets Up on the Sun, I was like, what is this? Like, and but it's great. It's one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah.
I think that's a lovely experience for people to have. And then especially like someone like yourself, then you just go full in. Yeah. And you're just like laser focused on an artist.
What really cemented me as a fan of his is two separate things, one of which is Storefront Hitchcock, but I'll save that. The first thing is, so after getting super into Underwater Moonlight, I'm like, where do I go now? And for some reason, probably because the title is so good and the cover is so good, I picked up I Often Dream of Trains. And it had so many songs on it, which just seemed like value when you're, kind of 22 and you can only afford to buy a CD or two that week, know. So I was like, I'm going to get I Often Dream of Trains. Now, the band I was in at the time, which was Scotland Yard Gospel Choir, that's the name.
You've been in some really good band, like, isn't it like Painkiller
the Pigeon? Yeah, that's my name for my solo stuff. Yeah. Scotland Yard Gospel Choir was sort of a Bell and Sebastian-y tinged kind of folk rocky thing. And we went down to South by Southwest that year and drove from Chicago. So that's like a 24-hour drive if you do it straight, basically. Mm-hmm. And we did, with people rotating who was driving, people sleeping overnight, and just to get there and get back and do our shows. On the drive down was the first time I'd put on, or I even opened I Often Dream of Trains. As we're driving out, I was the first person who got to like sleep, the first chunk, and then I was going to do some overnight driving. So I put on I Often Dream of Trains and like fell asleep, because ever since I'm a baby, I can fall asleep in a car, like no problem. That's just like that kind of motion, like it's a switch I can flip, like no problem.
That's a secret. It
kind of is, yeah. And so I kind of slept with this CD playing on repeat over and over and over again for like 3-4 hours. And I just kept waking up in the middle of like, whatever, Heart Full of Leaves, or, my favorite buildings, or Bones on the Ground. And just kind of like by the time I actually listened to it consciously for the first time in the morning, it was like I already knew every single song. They were already baked into my subconscious. And it was like I was familiar with all of it. And I maintain that is maybe the best way to get into Robyn Hitchcock, is to let it percolate in your head for a while before you choose to pay attention to it, if that makes sense.
Well, this film affected me that way.
Good.
It made me want to dive in more than I had, because he had always been on the outskirts. There's just too much music to love and devour, and
no kidding,
to put in my heart.
Yeah,
And
yes,
and
exactly.
in a weird way, it was like Robyn Hitchcock is fine without my fandom.
Yes.
I just felt like he, even though he seemed like a bit of a cult figure, it seemed like he was touring constantly,
Yeah.
and putting out records constantly. He didn't seem like a tragic figure,
No.
in terms of he's, I don't know. And even his interviews about, like how, he switched from being the Soft Boys into the Egyptians and going solo. He's so funny and he's so poetic.
Yes.
And such a satirist. And I'm a music person first and a lyric person second.
Yeah, I would
But-
say I am too.
So how do you deal with someone like Robyn who is really incredible at meshing the two? Like you need his sense of snark and humor and weirdness.
Right.
And I mean, really, they're poems. These songs rarely repeat any lyrical content.
That's right.
But was that a challenge for you at all? Because
Mhm.
I then learned to like love the music. I kind of went into it lyrics first for a change. With him.
Yeah. That's that would be the case with me. I mean, I'm sort of half and half. Like there are Superchunk records that are my favorite album of all time, and I would know maybe 10 lyrics on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
There are certain things that are like that, but then there is like Guided by Voices where I know like a chunk of those lyrics, even though they're so strange. Maybe that's why they stick in my head, because they're memorable, and that's certainly the case with Robyn Hitchcock. But like, if you're kind of starting with I Often Dream of Trains, I mean, the first track with lyrics is Sometimes I Wish I Was a Pretty Girl so I could look at myself in the shower. Like, whether you're a lyric person or not, that's sticking in your mind. That's not going anywhere once you get it.
Yeah, that song, 1974.
Yes.
What
a magnificent piece that is.
I know. I printed out the lyrics because there are some things in it that...
Oh, the allusions, the references are so amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, and it feels like 1974, waiting for the waves to come and crash on the shore, but you're far inland, you're in funky denim wonderland. You and David Crosby and a bloke, with no hand. You've got hair in places most people haven't got brains. And then there's the Syd Barrett's Last Session. He can't sing anymore. He's going to have to be Roger
now for the rest of his life.
Oh, my God. Okay, keep going.
This was a song. So 1974, one of the times I saw him, I requested this from the audience because he was asking. He was like, anybody have any requests when he was singing solo? And I was like, 1974. This was in 2017. So this is post-Trump being in office, and that all the run about Nixon in those lyrics.
Yes.
Like, as Nixon left the White House, you could hear people say they'll never rehabilitate that mother, no way. And worry, worry goes the helicopter out of my way. I've got a president to dump in the void. And that just, the whole crowd at the Turf Club in St. Paul just was like, yes. And he had to hold that chord for like a while to let the like anti-Trump ire kind of like percolate. It was kind of an awesome moment of connection of that song.
That Nixon part also got to me because it really was like, wow, it just is a continuing story, isn't it?
That's right.
Like you can really insert any politician's name into this.
Yeah.
And it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
And so I thought it's really beautiful. It talks about like working in record stores in 74 and discovering music and just being a weirdo. And then
Rebel was your favorite song on the Archway Road where it all belonged. Yeah.
It's great.
It's amazing. And the reference I really love to at the very end of the song, Python's last series, and the Guardian said the stench of rotting minds, which is a real review of the fourth series of Monty Python's Flying Circus, which is really funny to just put that in the song. I mean, it is 1974. That's when it came out. But I just love the specificity and the details of the things he loved when he was that age during that year.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure reading something like that pissed him off, and it just stuck in his head.
He's never gotten over it.
And then it says, the song ends, you could vote for Labor, but you can't anymore. Digging feels like 1974, digging Led Zeppelin in Grimsby. Oh, Christ.
Oh, Christ.
That's it.
That's such a great ending, too.
I know.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah, I adore that song.
Well, let's get into the movie. The film Storefront Hitchcock came out in 1998, and I believe you're an expert, so you can correct me on this, but Jonathan Demme had reached out originally to Robyn Hitchcock when he was a producer on That Thing You Do, was asking him to contribute tracks, original songs for that.
Yeah.
And Robyn says, I'm not going to do his voice. What should I do his voice? But it was yet another of the Birds ripoffs I've become renowned for.
That's right.
They didn't use it in the movie, but Jonathan and I sort of got acquainted at that time. So, but basically, that's how they met. And Jonathan really wanted to do like a live video, and then it expanded into an idea of doing a full concert. Demme was inspired to film in a storefront setting by a Hungarian theater group, Squat Theater, that operated in New York City in the 70s and 80s and typically performed in that storefront against a large plate glass window facing the street. Jonathan Demme, who produced, one of the top music concert films of all time, Stop Making Sense.
I mean, maybe the best.
Yeah, it may be the best.
It's in the conversation anyway.
My parents took me to that tour. I saw that the Speaking in Tongues tour or whatever it was called.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that movie, when it came out, people were dancing in the aisles, standing up like it was a concert.
Yeah,
like in a movie theater. And I feel like he's trying to capture a bit of that magic in this film with different simple stage settings, very small moves, stagehands bringing things in and out. I feel like because it is a smaller stage, it is some of the transitions are a little clunkier than, let's say, Stop Making Sense, where you've got more space. So when sometimes seeing somebody like blow out a candle while Robyn Hitchcock is doing his thing, you're kind of like, it's not a big deal, but I think stylistically, I don't know if every thing in this movie works once they start kind of shutting out the outside.
That's interesting. I saw one. This is a very underseen movie, and for proof of that, you could just look on Letterboxd, where it has been reviewed by a sum total of 75 people. That's it. This is a very obscure and a rare movie, but a couple people on there said a very similar thing to what you just said, which is that they kind of wish the window had been open the whole time, or that we got that sort of interaction between outside and inside more throughout the movie. But I kind of like the way it feels like it goes in. It becomes smaller and smaller as it goes, and it goes inside of Robyn Hitchcock is what I feel like. We're ever more just in the landscape of his mind and what he's thinking. And you never see the audience in this movie, which is interesting. You hear them, but you only see the stage. I guess in the opening shot where he says, "Hi, is my hair all right? Okay, let's go." You do see like a couple people in the edges of some chairs, but that's the most you ever get a sense of what it looks like to Robyn. You don't know. You're watching him. And I kind of like that. But yeah, like when it gets so small, like in You in Oblivion, which is one of my favorite songs in the whole movie, where the only staging is just a simple single light bulb that's just hanging down by his head. And that's it. That's the whole staging for that song.
Yeah, I did enjoy that.
And because it allows for that moment. One of the most riveting moments in the whole movie, when he just stares straight down the lens and the camera just holds on him for like a bit, staring straight at you. And he says, "Right when the death train got my ma, right when the death train got your pa." And it's just like, whoo. I mean, I'm currently experiencing some goosebumps thinking about it, because he's just, and this is another thing that I love about the movie in general, is that the theme overall is very dark. I mean, most of the songs are about death.
They are,
or about the past, or lost people, things that can never be reclaimed, ghosts, things like that. It's kind of for someone who spends so much of the movie's running time doing those strange, surreal flights of fancy that he does in between songs. It's interesting how heavy the actual material is. And he introduces maybe the heaviest song lyrically, the Yip song from Respect. He introduces that by saying, like, here's a song about cancer. Like, here's another one. Here's a pop song about cancer.
And there's a dedication for Raymond Hitchcock. It says 1922, 1992.
That's right, for his father.
I think without that introduction and without that title card, you may not have had the context.
Yes. I mean, the version on Respect doesn't let you in to what the song's actually about. It's too produced. It's too it's too shiny and upbeat, which, I mean, that is what he's going for, is the juxtaposition of shiny upbeat music, the yip 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 yip, with this like, my dad is dying right now, like.
Yes. Who is Vera Lynn?
Oh, Vera Lynn is the person who sings "We'll Meet Again" at the end of Doctor Strangelove. She was the Force's sweetheart, which is a phrase he uses in the song. She was known as the Force's sweetheart because all the squaddies in World War II like loved Vera Lynn records. That was like, that was what kind of kept spirits up. And so when he says "Force's sweetheart, you're my twin" in that song, what he's saying from his father's perspective is, you and I are both dead now, just like Vera Lynn. I am also now dead. Which is
amazing.
I know, it's very heady and strange, but you don't need to notice it. You could just go along with the sound of that song and go like, oh, that Yip song's pretty good. And then one day you might pick up 2 or 3 words and go, is this song about his father dying slowly? This is horrifying. It's amazing.
It is very poppy, very catchy.
Yeah.
Do you know how many, I counted, do you know how many times he's saying yep?
Oh.
Guess how many times it says yep in the live version?
I'm going to say like 90.
Higher.
Really? 140.
Little higher. What?
150?
Yeah, 150 times. On the dot.
No shit.
Yeah. He does 47, 45, then 48.
So
He's
many.
on fire. He's like, yep, 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 constantly. Also, it's one of the rare times in the movie where there's like a tracking shot. It tracks right into him really close. So it's very... Stop Making Sense does a few things like that, where all of a sudden you're taken out of the reality of it being a concert and the distance, and all of a sudden there's like a real stylized move that could only be done without a crowd. And shot at a different time.
It has to be.
And it was shot over 2 days.
I think they did it 3 times. I think I remember reading that they did the whole set list 3 different times.
Well, there's a reason why there's only a few reviews. The film was funded by Orion Pictures, and it declared bankruptcy right before this film came out.
Yeah.
And in Hitchcock's words, when MGM kind of unzipped their stomachs to see what they'd swallowed, they pulled out Orion and they cut open Orion's stomach. And inside Orion's stomach was wriggling Storefront Hitchcock, a little kind of minuscule $1 million project that MGM wasn't particularly interested in. And in its original U.S. release, it only played in one theater in New York, Film Forum, for 1 week, starting in November of 1998. And the worldwide gross was less than $13,000.
Jesus.
And like one of the reviews of the time, there was a review in Variety that it's amazing. It says, his songs can seem too calculatedly wacky at times, particularly amid studio recording gloss. And Hitchcock's best form has long been live performances, where his nasal yet rich, supple voice shines, and his seemingly impromptu between-song patter suggests a pleasing form of mild insanity.
Yeah.
So let's get into his banter.
Yes.
Because for me, I had the same reaction you did. I was not prepared for it.
Right.
I was not necessarily in the mood for it.
Uh-huh.
And so my first watch through of this film, I was kind of like, all right, he's going to do his thing again, and it's going to be all stream of consciousness and very weird. I know what he's trying to say, and there's some gravity to it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was very successful, just because I'd never seen him do this before. And then the song would come on, and I'd be like, oh, this is amazing. And then it would kind of take me out. But I feel like people, they desire that from him when they go to see him live.
Yes.
Does he say the same thing about every song on different tours, or is he kind of like...
He does not. It is literally that is happening in that moment, and it's gone after that, and it's never repeated, and I doubt he'd remember what he had said. It's like this is what I have come to love so much about him, is he really is... He's an open channel of creativity, and the reason he's so open is because he chooses not to cut it off. Like, he allows it to just continue to flow, and he tries not to look at it too square in the eye, where the songs are coming from, where the inspiration is coming from. It's a kind of Bob Pollardy, you know. It's like if he ever were to think about it too hard, it might stop, you know. It's like the continuing to do it is what makes it continue to happen, and the talking between songs is the same as writing the songs to him. Like, those are all the same flow of consciousness. But I mean, you can't deny it. It's very, like, for example, to introduce Filthy Bird, the second or third song, where he says, it's my absolute favorite thing. This is another one. And everyone kind of laughs because it's such a weak, lame way to introduce a song. And then he goes, well, the thing is, people, I don't know why people ever actually introduce songs, because the song itself is an introduction to itself. It's like if you meet someone, say they called Martha, that person happens to be known as Martha, just as I might be called Bloomingdale's, or Denny might be called Staten Island, and you're like, where are we? What are you doing right now? But he's got a kind of a point, which is that, like, there's a whole mass of molecules inside of a person. And so he's like, it's the same with the song. I could say what a song's called, which isn't going to be much of a clue unless you've heard it before, or I can explain what it's about, and I'm going to be lying. So in the end, there's not much point to it. And he kind of trails off. And then my personal favorite moment in the entire movie, he goes, that's interesting. There's some people over there polishing a gun carriage. Just out of nowhere, he just says that. And he goes, one of those big brass 18th century things for storing in time capsules. And Denny Benet, who's, playing violin with him, is just laughing and looking at him, and he pauses and he goes, says to her, there's a very thin line between torture and cosmetics. I wonder, now's our chance to cross it. Okay, take a deep breath and yip-a-dang. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're like, that's the intro of the song Filthy Bird, which appears to be a song about, like, environmental, like, climate change, I guess, really, like the changes, the changes to the environment, and also the changes to people's mental environment based on the filthy stuff that's coming off the television. And so he kind of, the song tells you what it's about. Like he says, it's like, I could say what it's called, but who cares? Like, the song itself is its introduction to itself. But it's funny that he takes 2.5 minutes to say that as the introduction to the song. Like, I'm not going to introduce this song, and here's 2.5 minutes of me explaining why I'm not going to. It's a very confusing thing to do. It's
very funny hearing you know this banter inside out.
Yeah.
You're reciting it back to me like we used to do with comedy albums. We would know everything about, a Steve Martin album or Gilda Radner or whatever, and you would just, spit it back out, often not knowing what you were saying. But it's really interesting to hear that the banter is right there with his lyricism and his music. It's just part of the complete character who is Robyn Hitchcock.
Yes.
And you mentioned Robert Pollard earlier, and it was funny. He also, throughout the years, just started putting more and more stage banter into things.
Right. Culminating in those in the Relaxation of the Asshole records.
Yes, he put out two comedy banter records. And I remember there were times where people would be looking at us in the audience who may not have seen this before, and they're like, "Are you going to play another song?" Like they had a look of fear in their eyes.
At any point, is there a song at some point?
And I remember telling somebody in Louisville, I was like, they're like, is the show done? Are you gonna, like, what's going on? I said, no, you're getting 2 shows tonight.
That's right.
This means it's not going to be a 2.5 hour show. It's going to be a 3.5 hour show. We're not cutting any songs. You're just going to have to let him do something. And I remember one time when he had his solo band with Tommy Keene.
Yes, the Ascended Masters.
Tommy just kind of went into his song because Bob was talking really long, and Bob was not happy about being cut off. He was like, never cut me off when I'm on a roll. Like, this is like, he gets as much joy out of that as he does performing his songs.
Exactly. Right.
So,
here's another interesting element of the project known as Storefront Hitchcock is that and you kind of mentioned this at the beginning, there are multiple versions of it. Every version is different. Every version has something unique to it that the others do not have, which is strange. The movie is very short. It's only 1 hour 17. The double vinyl version is 1 hour 37. So it's got an extra 20 minutes, and that is primarily taken up by 2 songs that are only on the vinyl. One of which is actually maybe my favorite song in the whole Storefront Hitchcock universe, and I'm sad that it doesn't seem to exist as a video. They must have filmed it, but Statue with a Walkman is what it's called. The vinyl version is maybe 7-8 minutes long, and it's one of the most perfect, like, in terms of what we're talking about right now. Statue with a Walkman, as performed in Storefront Hitchcock, is the exact center point of these 2 things. It is a song that has been composed, the song has been modified for this live version to leave spaces for this long spoken word ramble that he does, explaining the statue with the Walkman and talking about having ladles of creosote at night with the men of influence or something. It's so strange. But then the lyrics themselves are just, statue with a Walkman knows his hemoglobin count. Statue with a Walkman, always the correct amount or something. It's like it's hard to even know what that song is about. But as done in the vinyl version, it's exactly banter and a song at the same time, which is just, and I have no idea if he had pre-written any of those things that he's saying about the creosote and the men of influence. I don't know if that's just total rap banter off the top of his head. It seems like it might be. But yeah, the vinyl version has Statue with the Walkman and also a great song called Eerie Green Storm Lantern, which is kind of a rarity of his. I'm not quite sure why those are only when you have a movie. I mean, I guess, I don't know, you want to keep it kind of tight, but it just seems strange to me to not have at least one or two more. There's songs in the movie that aren't on either of the soundtracks.
Isn't there a Jimi Hendrix cover on
the Wind Cries Mary is on both CD and vinyl. It's beautiful. Great cover.
Not in the movie.
It's not in the movie. Neither is let's see. So weirdly, the opening track in the movie, The Devil's Radio, which is from Moss Elixir, is not on either of the soundtracks. It's only in the movie. So is I Am Not Me, which was the K Records single. That one is also only in the movie and not on either of the soundtracks. Then there's ones that are only on the CD, like Filthy Bird, You in Oblivion and Airscape. Not in the movie also is Where Do You Go When You Die, which is a fantastic song. That's on the CD and the vinyl. So it's strange that this thing exists, but it's almost like there is no one definitive version of the 19 song set list that they did. You kind of have to collect it from everywhere.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. I kind of like that it's like it's sort of mysterious and unknowable. Even me who's watched it, I don't know what, 50, 100 times, something like that. Cause it's a comfort thing for me. I'll just have it on in the background often, cause I just, I don't know. It's just, it calms me down. It's a good place for my brain to exist when this is percolating in my background, but even with all this familiarity, I still don't know it 100%. I still will never know it because it's like, it's unknowable. It's an idea and a project which came out as a film, a book, or sorry, a film, a vinyl, a CD, like that are all distinct versions. All the banter is different on the other versions too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the banter on the vinyl version is totally different. There's a couple that are the same, but even then it has different edits of the ones that are in the movie. Like before he plays Freeze, which is a great rocker, right before that in the movie, he looks at the camera and he says, what was the kindly old lady made of? Right? On the vinyl version, we understand that actually there's another line to that. He says, what was the kindly old lady made of? Fuck ass rock and roll, which they don't have in the movie. That's funny to me.
I want to talk to you about these versions of these songs. Like a song like you mentioned, Freeze. It's a really incredible choice. It's originally a Robyn Hitchcock and the Egyptian song that is a really propulsive song with really dense instrumentation and percussion.
Right.
And here he is just playing it on an electric guitar.
Just him and that Telecaster. A little
distortion.
Yeah.
And for the majority of the song, it's one note, like a drone song.
Yes.
But it's just killer.
It's so killer.
I discovered the original song after hearing this, and I was just blown away by the choices that he constantly makes in this film. They're pretty brave in terms of not comfortable choices necessarily, or obvious choices that you'll be like, okay, this is a singer-songwriter thing we're going to do. Jonathan Demme's going to do it. And what would be the best things that would complement me having one person or occasionally like a violin player playing or an additional guitar player? Most of the time it's just him. Yeah. For 90% of the film. Yeah. I was just curious about what you thought of his choices. And
it's an interesting selection. It's mostly sort of contemporary. I mean, there's songs that you can tell that Moss Elixir has just been, is what he's technically touring, because there's quite a few from Moss Elixir. And mostly they're kind of in the recent-ish slipstream of like the last two Egyptians records. There's one from Fegmania, and which is I think the earliest thing on here. Like he has songs that are that would be known, you know, beyond him. Like say, you know, you could do Madonna of the Wasps here, you know, that was a radio single. Or you could do So You Think You're in Love from Perspex Island. That was a radio single that did pretty well. But no, he avoids all that stuff. I mean, you wouldn't, if you weren't an obsessive, you probably wouldn't know a single one of these songs. But in a way, I kind of think that's the power of it, because it's like, this is an object. I almost feel like Jonathan Demme's entire reason for making it is, I mean, very pure. I think he loves he loves Robyn Hitchcock. He loves his music. He really thinks he's a brilliant, like I say, an open channel, and he wants to capture exactly what that's like to be taken by surprise by a Robyn Hitchcock performance. And I think that kind of plays into the reason why the music is kind of obscure songs of his. It's like, let's focus this on a set of songs that does kind of tell a certain sort of a story, certainly tonally, certainly mood wise, there's a story being told. But also let's not worry about whether anyone's ever heard of you or are familiar with it. Let's just let exactly what you do be the film. And which is what makes me so sad that it, like you say, made what $13,000 when it first came out and played in one theater. Like, that's just so depressing for something that it's really clear the two of them poured a lot of thought and energy into. Like, this doesn't just happen.
No, it's masterful in terms of, like, I mean, Jonathan Demme is making choices.
Yes, he is.
You know, we're gonna have in this song, we're gonna put a gauze over the window so you can see a little bit outside. Now we're gonna bring a disco ball on.
Yes.
Now there's a tomato.
Yeah.
Now there's a light bulb.
Tomato.
Now we can see outside again, and it's a little darker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Jonathan Demme's direction in this.
Yes.
And you say you're a Demme fan.
Definitely. I love him.
But first, one of the most amazing thing that happens in this film right out of the gate is he is playing in front of a window and people are walking by. My first instinct from watching this was, some of this has to be staged. Like, almost immediately, there's somebody standing there with a photograph?
A big photograph, a blown up photo, yeah.
Yeah, and they're just standing in the corner, just staring into the thing. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be this kind of film.
Right.
There's going to be characters coming in.
Interaction,
But right away, you realize, nope, that was just somebody going by, saw that something was being filmed, put it up there. They kind of wander off. There's a lot of people, like, congregating and pointing and walking away. Do you have a favorite moment in terms of the staging?
I do love the light bulb, and I also like the candles for Glass Hotel, because that's just like a perfect. That's how that song should be staged, is lit only by flickering candles. Like, you shouldn't be able to see. You should almost not even be able to see him. Like, that song is so fragile and small and dark, and I love that. I know it's so simple. I keep picking the most simple ones, but I just really like those. The disco ball for Airscape is awesome too, because it's like the first bit of glitz really in the entire movie, and it's such a relief to see like some sparkle and shine at that point, which is kind of amazing.
It's like a fake out rock moment. It's like, hey, we're at a rock show, remember? Like, I'm let's put some razzle dazzle in here. Yes,
exactly. So I like all that. I really love that moment, though, that, as you say, the guy just holding that photo of, it's like a guy holding a cat. And I feel like I read at some point, or there's some interview that says that's someone. I don't know if it was someone they knew, or if it was like a known, like, New York street, like, one of those kinds of characters that you get. It was something like that, but that is someone, and I apologize that I can't quite remember, but I know I've come across that information before, that's somebody.
I gotta end this interview right now.
Okay.
That is you're supposed to know everything. Come on.
I don't know absolutely everything. No, I just said it was mysterious and unknowable.
Well, what about
yes.
Swing to Cambodia?
Yes.
Another stage performance that was stylized at times, and other times like a live performance.
And also Neil Young's Heart of Gold, which comes after this by 8-9 years, which similarly kind of has staging that's bespoke for each song and kind of transitions in that way, that kind of makes it almost a stage show as much as it is a concert, which is something that I love about Demme in general. I just want to say this while I'm thinking about it, but the thing that I love about the way Demme makes movies is that he's so empathetic to his characters. He doesn't put any judgment on his characters. You don't feel an author's hand begging you to think this way or that way about any of the characters in his movies, including Hannibal Lecter. You know what I mean? You're encouraged to see Hannibal Lecter for exactly what he is, which is a brilliant guy and a dangerous killer. You know what I mean? Like, those can both be true. And so, like, even in a movie like Married to the Mob, like, that is a movie that in anyone else's hands is just some rom-com that's a good time or whatever. But that movie has such interest in the people that it's looking at. It loves Michelle Pfeiffer, and it loves the Dean Stockwell character, even though he's the bad guy. Like, it loves its characters so much. And so when that is applied to his performance films, it becomes this other thing entirely. And Stop Making Sense, what he's doing is almost making sure that each one of the band members is treated like a character. You get your time with them. You get to understand exactly what they do. You get to, like, you hang out on this corner of the stage for a little bit and just hang out with Tina Weymouth, and, you know, over here, and you just hang out with Steve Scales for a bit. And that carries through all of his performance films, including, and this may sound silly, his final film, which I really like, the final film he ever made, which is Justin Timberlake and the Tennessee Kids.
I've never seen it.
It's a live Justin Timberlake show from Las Vegas at I think it was the last show of his, like, huge multi-year residency or whatever that he did in Vegas. I'm not, you know, like we were saying before, I'll watch any rock doc. I'm not like the hugest Justin Timberlake fan, but it is Jonathan Demme doing a Justin Timberlake, and I'm like, I am interested to see what that's like.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same. You get to know his band members. You care about the bass player. You care about the drummer. He's interested in the people he's looking at, and he wants you to be interested in them too. That's his entire thing. And that movie, and thus his whole career, brilliantly ends with something that underlines all of this, which is after the concert's over, the credits roll over like a 4 or 5 minute sequence of what it took to set up that show you've just been watching. Like, we watched the crew build the stage, hang the lights, like build the thing that is like this giant glass moving structure that is so impressive in the show. Someone actually had to make it. And Jonathan Demme cares about those people too. And he ends his career and his final film by just showing you the little people that it takes to make the big thing that you're so impressed by. And that, I think, is like, that's his philosophy in a nutshell. You know, that's exactly what's so great about him. And so in Storefront Hitchcock, it's exactly the same. He wants you to understand the character of Robyn. He's less interested in getting you into the character of Denny and Tim Keegan, who come on to play, but he still gives them their moments. They, like, certainly in Filthy Bird and Let's Go Thundering, Denny Benet's like electric violin stuff is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, she's making some crazy sounds out of that thing that's so cool. There's one song called Beautiful Queen. It's also from Muscle Elixir, not in the movie, but on both of the soundtrack versions. And on that one, she's got like a heavy octave pedal on the violin that does this big old swoop, and it has so much bass. Every time I listen to that on CD, it's almost too much. It's so intense. And it's so cool that that's just her violin, you know? So he wants to make sure you know what everyone's doing. But really, it's just, yeah, it's like, this is an empathetic portrait of this guy that he loves personally. He's like, I love this guy, and I hope you will too, which is why I'm so sad that it's such an obscure movie, because it really should be more seen. I think it paints a great, like, you certainly will come away from this movie knowing exactly what it is Robyn Hitchcock does. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand he does these things. Yes, I get it now. It's, you know, it's a great calling card for that era in his career, which I do think still is maybe a peak right around then.
Well, as somebody who was seeing it for the first time, it was very successful in terms of, I'm getting a sense of who this guy is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready for the banter, just like you were. These songs are amazing. His lyrics are amazing. His guitar playing is incredible.
We haven't even talked about those. The multiple solos that end various songs where he just goes into the stratosphere.
I had no idea. And one of the things I really liked about his choices was, I think I always thought of him as more of, I didn't ever think of him as a guitar player. I just always thought of him as a songwriter and a lyricist. He just seemed like that guy. But to watch these extended freakouts, and the electric stuff, and then just beautiful things. There was a song, I think it's called "I'm Only You,"
Yeah, I'm only
and
you. Yeah.
watching his hands do all this stuff, it doesn't even look like he's like, I'm like, how are you making these chords?
It doesn't look like he could be playing what you're hearing because of the weird hammer-ons that he keeps doing. It's so strange.
It was improbable. And I had to rewind it and watch it again. And I was like, that is incredible. And so I think Demme, like he did with Stop Making Sense, and even in Swing to Cambodia, he knows this is the time to really focus on this. This is the time to kind of, focus on the background artist or the tomato or whatever,
Yeah, right.
And it feels like a collaboration too. Like, I know they were playing into each other's sensibilities in terms of how to tell this, because this is not like Robyn Hitchcock took the tomato and the disco ball on tour.
No, exactly. This is
this was like a concept.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Well, are there any songs that you wish were in this movie that,
that's interesting.
Out of your wildest dreams, like what would you love to see put in this?
Selfishly, I mean, it would be things from I Often Dream of Trains. That's the one thing that I think is kind of strange, because this coming off of Moss Elixir, which color scheme wise is tied to the previous album which a couple of these tracks come from also, and also tied to I Often Dream of Trains. Like, that run of his solo records are always gold and green. Those are always the colors of them for some unknown reason.
Oh.
And that holds true today. Every time he makes one of these just purely solo and acoustic records, they're always gold and green in the kind of artwork. So it's interesting that he has the second and third of his like solo acoustic records represented, but not the first one, where it all kind of comes from. So yeah, it would definitely be something from I Often Dream of Trains. Maybe, My Favorite Buildings is my personal favorite from that record. But in terms of actually like matching with the tone that he's going for here and the kind of lost people and death and ghosts, I mean, it should be something like Trams of Old London would have been perfect in this movie. Uncorrected personality traits, something like, if there was a way to do like an a cappella thing in this, I think that would have fit really well too.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be something from those records. I think it's interesting that they're not there, but also it would have been cool, like just a song like Freeze, which, like you say, in the recorded version with the Egyptians is a huge production. Seeing that stripped down to this version is really cool. So I would have taken any Egyptians era tracks, even some of the hits, even a Madonna of the Wasps or a Man with the Light Bulb Head would have been cool to see how he would have done that as a solo performance. Because he obviously recontextualized a couple of these, and it was very effective. So yeah, for me it would be something from I Often Dream of Trains, but I would have taken any of the Egyptian stuff reconfigured for this format, because it's really interesting to see them taken apart like that.
Yeah. Well, Devon, I really hope that I was able to convince you to like Robyn Hitchcock with our discussion.
I'm on the fence.
With this discussion, I feel like I brought a lot of heat and power to it, and I really hope I can crack your skull open and get some of this food inside it.
There you go.
I always end the interviews with the same question, but I tailor it a little bit depending on the film.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you give this film on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest? How many yips do you give this film?
Let's see. Look.
Wait, you know what? I'm going to rephrase that. No,
it's 10
from
yips.
1 to 150 yips.
Okay, sure. Yip.
Yeah.
Yip. So do all 150. I've logged it on Letterboxd multiple times. This is a movie I've seen over and over again. It's a perfect movie as far as I'm concerned. I say in one of my Letterboxd reviews of it that I might like it more than Stop Making Sense, which is not to say that it's better than Stop Making Sense. Just I personally love Storefront Hitchcock to a degree that slightly pains me. Like it aches a little bit how much I love the movie, and the being in its world and being in its headspace, like I said earlier, I find just soothing and relaxing. So yeah, it's 10 yips. It's 150 yips. It's all the yips.
That's perfect. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Of course.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday, so be sure to search for the show on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the show. And if you've enjoyed this, it would mean a lot to me if you would rate and review it as well. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie, and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!